Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another edition of the Benchwarmer Sports Podcast. Raffi here, joined by Davian. Davian, March Madness is in full swing. I love that we just got the first two rounds of March Madness, but I'm also now upset that we don't have those first two rounds of March Madness anymore. It was so beautiful, and now it's gone. But you know what? We still got the Sweet 16. We still got the Elite Eight, Final Four, and the National Championship, obviously. So we still got plenty of basketball to go. I can't wait to see what unfolds. There's going to be a lot to discuss about what's already happened and looking ahead to what's going on. Some of this has already happened as we're recording this podcast Monday, March 23rd. But regardless, we wanted to give our thoughts and understanding the delays and when we publish this podcast and with when the games happen. But regardless, we still wanted to give our thoughts. So that's what we're going to do on this podcast for the upcoming games that are either have occurred or now occurring as well. So, David, before we touch on March Madness, how are you? How are things? I'm sure you're doing great. I know we'll get into this shortly with the March Madness segment. Obviously, some of our picks may or may not have been right. I know, surprising. We both thought that our respective brackets were going to be perfect and we were going to win the whatever $1 billion from Kalshi Sports. We both thought that we were going to win it all, but unfortunately, there's always next year. So, Davian, I hand it over to you. Outside of the fact that your bracket is not in shambles yet, but it's treading water right now. How are things?
So, UPenn lost to Illinois, but
Wow, I'm so surprised, Davian.
but it's okay because as the UPenn student section was chanting at the end of the game, they will be working for the UPenn students in the future, which was wild.
That's so fake news. I will not tolerate that as an engineering major from U of I. That's ridiculous. Maybe the business, but honestly, U of I's business was also pretty good. But I will not tolerate the engineering. U of I's engineering is way better than UPenn's engineering.
Yeah.
I don't want to get into the whole college academics debate right now, but from maybe status, but U of I engineering is an Ivy level education, and I'm not just saying that because I went to U of I.
I don't know what's been ticking off Raffi more, that or Bama actually playing better than they did without Max Holloway.
Why?
Second leading scorer playing. I know I've been saying a lot. Besides that, Raffi, this last week was my birthday, so it was great. March Madness started on my birthday, so I turned the big 2-1, so got to have my first alcoholic beverage while watching March Madness. Nothing's better than that. Great weekend overall. And so we'll dive more into March Madness, but also we do want to recap, of course. This past weekend was the Fanatics Flag Football Classic, and of course also the World Baseball Classic was last week as well. Both that being said, before we get into that, Raffi, how have you been? Besides being angry a bit.
Just one of those Mondays, am I right? Garfield the cat guy he really knew what was up with all that Monday talk and all those Monday comic strips. I mean, it's Mondays.
No, exactly. Yeah.
Mondays. Anywho, yeah, we'll get into Alabama shortly. Honestly, there's not too much else to say. I'm genuinely surprised that they.
I mean, we all are,
Texas Tech in the fashion that they did, just with the fact that I know JT Toppin was out, and I believe I heard this from the Ion College Basketball Podcast, one of my favorite college basketball. Actually, no, it's my favorite college basketball podcast. I listen to them all throughout the year when I'm catching up on college basketball and when there's no hockey podcast out there. Out of my top ones, I definitely like to listen to the Ion College Basketball Podcast as well. But they were saying that Texas Tech, defensively, since losing JT Toppin, I believe it was 302 in the entire country. They just could not figure out how to defend their opponents without JT Toppin, who obviously is one of the best college athletes, college basketball players this year. So that was a big thing. I was right to pick Texas Tech winning a game, or at least losing early, but unfortunately I was wrong about Akron, and I underestimated the rest of the support of Alabama. Alabama just rolled on, and they're still rolling. Tide's still rolling. Roll Tide. As that's a rare thing where I say roll Tide. Typically that's you in the past year.
Usually it's
me. Before we get into college basketball more in depth, because there's so much to talk about, so many crazy games. It was one of the best plays that I've seen in a minute, and a lot of great things that happened at the buzzer too, which we really haven't seen in the past couple years. Davian, we'll touch on the World Baseball Classic. I don't want to talk too much about it because, as you know, I do not like talking about things where the USA does not win. But I'll hand it over to you, Davian, so you can talk about Aaron Judge completely ruining what could have been
Yeah.
a great moment for our great nation in baseball.
Well, I mean, honestly, there's just a few factors to it. One was that not all of Team USA was playing, really. Scooball played one game and then really kind of like bowed out. Our pitching was pretty solid, especially led by Paul Skeens. Skeens is honestly was played amazing. Aaron Judge was supposed to be the next Captain America. He was supposed to take over for Mike Trout, and when it mattered most, he did not show up. Simple as that. Bryce Harper did show up here and there, especially in that final game against Venezuela. He was the one who tied it up, um, but just overall, just a lackluster performance from Team America. But what I will say about this as well, Rafi, is that baseball is very much of an underrated sport globally in the sense that it's pretty big. I mean, look at Team Italy, look at Team Venezuela, look at the team Dominican Republic. Those teams are very, very good. And now, look, you can argue all you want that Team Italy is literally just a bunch of Americans from New Jersey, but at the end of the day, like they played amazing. And Team Venezuela, for it's interesting, and the commentators really talked about like like what does a country have to play for, right? And for Team USA, like there was not you didn't really feel that motivation. They're playing for something bigger. For Venezuela, it's going through such a turbulent time, and we won't get into the geopolitics here, of course, but they were playing and representing an entire country, and that's what I kind of hate. That when it comes to baseball and basketball, a lot of times like Team USA is not really getting that pride and joy and the backing from the nation, and especially with the World Baseball Classic. I mean, it's like it was not getting enough attention from the American media, I think. But we could get into that all day. I think that the gameplay itself, how the Team USA played, our hitting sucked. Our the manager just was not great at all. Just a lot of mistakes were made here and there. Things were said that shouldn't have been said. Like at one point, like right when Team USA almost did make it into the playoff round, the Team USA manager was saying like, "Oh no, we actually like this game didn't really matter that much because like we were already in." Like no, it was not guaranteed when we lost to Team Italy, and had to rely on Team Mexico losing badly. So it's disappointing in many ways. It was great to watch Team USA play baseball, though. A lot of highlights in the sense of some of the home runs. Bryce Harper, tying that game was great. It was just fun to watch. Baseball is becoming a better sport to watch, Rafi. I know we don't really talk about on this podcast, but it really much is. With the game clock, with the way that the strike system is being upgraded to now that you have like a VAR system for it, it's getting more and more consistently better, and I'm excited to see what the future of the sport really brings. But I yapped, I think, there for like 3 minutes straight, so I'll pass it over to you, Rafi.
Yeah, and I primarily watched the highlights. I didn't watch too many of the games, but I certainly kept tabs on everything just by being chronically online and chronically on Twitter and Instagram, especially Instagram Reels. The does this mean that Venezuela takes Maduro back memes were absolutely fantastic. So to those who made those memes, you did a great job. I genuinely enjoyed looking through those when I was doom scrolling Instagram Reels over the past week. Anywho, yeah, I always enjoy best on best country versus country sports. Obviously, we all know that I loved the Olympics hockey just because obviously I'm big in hockey and love that. I love the World Cup, which we'll be talking about shortly. There's some qualification games that are happening right now for some of the final spots in the World Cup. So we'll be talking about the World Cup very soon, very shortly on this podcast as well. And even like the NBA stuff too, like basketball. I know USA typically dominates, but even now, like France is coming, it's up and coming. Spain has been looking really good. They've had certainly their flares of looking really solid as well.
Yeah, in
So
basketball.
I
Yeah.
always like seeing that country on country sport and just really any sport. It's always great. So definitely we'll keep more tabs on the World Classic of Baseball. I think it's likely going to be every 3 to 4 years now, and I'm glad that they brought it back again. It looks like it is something that can be very successful, and I
Yeah.
think those smaller types of tournaments do a lot of good for baseball because for some people, again, like myself, 164 games, I'm not going to watch the Cubs play 164 games. It's just
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
I'm not going to. I'll keep tabs on them, but I'm just not going to pay attention to the entire season, get really into it because it's again 164 games, and I can handle 82 with the Blackhawks. I can't do under
Yeah.
64 baseball games. Baseball much more more not I don't want to say boring, but just like slower pace than hockey, which is there's always something going on. But when you have something in a short form for baseball, like a little tournament, and obviously I love the MLB playoffs, then for me that at least attracts me as a viewer more because rather than you're watching 160 games, it's okay. I'm watching a set of like 16 games. We're watching the U.S. play. USA is taking on all these other countries who are really formidable. Japan, obviously, one of the big hitters. Venezuela, a lot of the Latin America countries, very good at baseball. So, as someone who's not really into baseball, I certainly see this and see the appeal and say, you know what, I can certainly get into this at some point. But moving over now to another thing that happened, which, to be honest, completely went under the radar for me. The Fanatics Flag Football Classic. You had Tom Brady playing. You had Rob Gronkowski playing, although Gronk got hurt. That was mind-boggling to see when I was doing my research earlier for this podcast. David, I want to hand it over to you because obviously you were paying more attention to this. The big question, does this mean that Tom Brady's taking Drake May's spot? Would love to hear you talk for 5-10 minutes about that. But the other question that I'd actually like you to talk about as well is Team USA did really well versus the NFL athletes, the NFL teams. And I know some people are going to see that and say, well, why is Joe Burrow going to really sacrifice himself just for like a random tournament in late March when he has such a big year for him next year? And that's with a lot of NFL athletes with all the money they make, etc. So, David, what were your thoughts on Team USA winning and then kind of just the conversation that has occurred since that happened?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think there's something to be said that Team USA should have the ability to compete for an Olympic spot. The same way that right now RG3 is competing. I don't know if you saw this, Rafi. He's competing for a spot to compete for flag football. The thing is that flag football is a completely different game than regular football. Rafi, there is no padding. There is no helmets. There is no hitting. It is about speed, agility, and being able to juke out your players. So a guy like Travis Hunter, a guy like uh, uh, Devontae Smith, AJ Brown, even like guys who are speedy is what you need on your team. So it was surprising to see how well Brady played and the reason why Brady played so well is because he's able to get the ball out of his hands so fast in many ways. The games is different, but one thing I will say is that the NFL players only had 2 days to prepare for this tournament. They had no time to prepare. You give them 2 months, Rafi, they are annihilating this Team USA team. And I'm not saying it's because this Team USA team is bad, but I'm just saying it's because the NFL players pool is much more talented than much more talented in terms of strength, in terms of speed, in terms of the knowing the game and knowing and have football IQ itself. But with all that being said, Rafi, I think it was amazing to watch, right? Seeing Tom Brady throw the ball for the first time since 2023 in a competitive environment was great. Seeing all the beef between Logan Paul and Brady and then speed covering Devontae Smith, it just really grows the sport, I think. In a world where right now, like there's so much rise of technology, you might think sports are dying, but in reality, sports is just turning into a different form of entertainment and growing in a way. Seeing Joe Burrow play was fun. OBJ with a one-handed catch at one point. DeAndre Hopkins looking like his old self. What else was there? Seeing Gronk catch a touchdown from Brady, and of course getting injured, which stinks, but kind of in Gronk fashion, of course. I think it was all great to see. And I will say it'll be very interesting to watch this sport in 2028 on the Olympic stage, seeing how other countries compete, because it is a different sport. It's not the same as regular American football. This is flag football. The rules are different. The gameplay is different. It's much faster. It's much different. Like the best player I think right now in flag football, Rafi, would be a guy like Travis Hunter, a two-way player, because I believe you can't fully have like 11 on 11. Like you can't have 22 players, I believe, total. I actually don't even think it's 11 on 11. I think it's 7 on 7 gameplay usually. But
I believe
point
so.
is,
That sounds right.
yeah, but point is though, it's like a guy like Travis Hunter who's like super speedy, has can play wide receiver and can play corner. It's a guy that would really dominate in the sport rather than a guy like you won't see like an Ndamukong Suh type player. You won't see any offensive tackles, any nose tackles. Like you won't even see a guy like potentially even like TJ Watt because he might not even be fast enough for a game like this. So but I think overall is great to see.
Yeah. And it'll definitely be intriguing to see what the fallout is about this and just what winds up happening if they wind up including NFL players. There's no NFL players. Obviously, at the end of the day, if they send out a bunch of players who have been playing flag football but aren't NFL athletes and they fall short, that's going to obviously cause a lot of discourse as well. Regardless of the out, if it's NFL players and they fall short, or if it's the flag football athletes and they fall short, if regardless of who's representing the USA in flag football in 2020 in LA, though if they fall short, there's going to be a lot of discourse on what ifs, what could have happened. It's again not to compare everything to not to be like Patrick Mahomes is to Chris Collinsworth as hockey is to me. But we talked all this time about like the USA missed this player, they should have had this player, that player. If the USA won, so nothing matters anymore. The decision was a decision. Everything, whether you like it or not, it worked and led to the USA to winning. So whoever winds up representing this flag football team, if they win, then there's going to be no discourse. If they lose, then there's going to be more discourse for the next time things happen in 2032. But let's close that off, and we'll spend the last 15 minutes of this podcast or so talking about and recapping the first two rounds of March Madness. Davian, I'll take things and then hand it over to you just to give you a little bit of a break. To those who are saying, oh, Cinderella's dead, oh, we're not going to see a mid-major anymore in the NLA era going a deep run, I just want to say that we have been incredibly spoiled the past 6 to 8 years with just a bountiful of insane upsets. You have St. Peter's, you have FDU, you have UMBC. 2 16 seeds beating a 1 seed was unheard of because it never happened until 2018. We've had two over the past, I believe, what is it now, 8 years, which is crazy that was that long ago. But anyways, my point still stands. We're seeing this year and last year less mid-major schools now in this NIL era going deep runs. But you look at some of the matchups. Siena, had they had a deeper lineup and made a couple baskets and things went a little bit more in their way, if Duke didn't get, we'll call it what it is, they got some foul help. They got some help from the refs too to help them win that game. The rest weren't good either side, but still, that was a close. Duke very well could have lost that game.
Yeah, they could have.
If it was a more competent 16 seed, they would have lost. If this was FDU or UMBC, Duke would have lost that game. And you can make the argument that some of these other 16 seeds could have wound up beating Duke this year if they had gotten their lick at Duke instead of Siena did.
Yeah.
And you look at some high point, obviously, be Wisconsin. McNeese kept things very close with Vanderbilt for the most part. North Dakota State kept things pretty close with Michigan State until Michigan State pulled away. A lot of this was these lower, Kennesaw State, for example. Akron played pretty tight with Texas Tech, where they played alongside Wright State with Virginia was very close for the most part. I know it was a 9-point win for Virginia, but that game was pretty close for the most part. You had a lot of these mid-major schools keep things really close until like halfway in the second half, and then the better team, the higher seed, wound up taking things away and pulling away towards the end. And I just want to say that to those who are saying, oh, we're not going to see non-power 4 schools going deep runs, etc., I just got to say, we've just been spoiled. And that's really what it comes down to. We're going to see more upsets. We're going to see more of these random schools come out of nowhere and go on deep runs because it's still clear that things are very close between a lot of these schools. Yes, NIL might be making a difference, but overall, I think we just have a lot of recency bias over past years and saying, well, now there's not these teams going on deep runs. Well, they keep things close anyway. So I don't think NIL is really going to make a difference on how many upsets we're going to see. There's going to be a year in the next year or two where there's going to be an insane amount of upsets, and this is all just going to be forgotten.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with that. I think what surprised me was LIU not winning. I really thought they had it against Arizona. Fins up. Exactly. Um, Utah State again did not surprise me. That's kind of what we predicted. Yeah, yeah.
They
Like
played tight
I
versus
feel like
Arizona.
yeah. What? Say that
They
again.
played tight versus Arizona.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
made
yeah,
it
yeah.
very interesting towards the end.
They did. They did. Yeah, yeah. Um, So I like look, I think people complain about like, oh well, it's like there's not that many upsets all the time. But it's like it doesn't matter. When there is an upset, it's amazing because like there shouldn't be upsets. That's the thing that people forget. Like people who watch March Madness so often are like, why is there not enough upsets? Because there's a reason why there's a committee that makes the decisions to seed them in the way they do based off the wins they have throughout the season, and it's because of how good of a team they are. So when people are upset when it's like when they don't see some upsets like South Florida upsetting Louisville, like yeah, that could have happened, but Louisville was a better team. And of course they went on to lose to Michigan State, but still, I think seeing Texas's run has been interesting. Gonzaga, I know Rafi, you and I, we spoke about how we weren't very high on them, but we just expected them to win. More so because uh, we didn't expect this Texas team to be so great. But with that being said, Rafi, is there anything that you're trying to see now in the Sweet 16 to really pick the winner? If you had to redo your bracket, right? You see all the results come out in Sweet 16, and is there anything you're really looking out from one team that you're like, if this team does that thing, I would have picked them instead to win.
I will live and die with the bracket that I made. Anyone who makes the second chance bracket, I ugh, disgusting. How could you? It's you live and this is my Titanic. The bracket I build at the start before March Madness happens is my boat. And when that boat sinks, I sink with it. We are not ditching it for another bracket. That is ridiculous. That is preposterous. I will not stand for it. Now, that being said, honestly, I'm pretty happy with my bracket pick so far. I had St. John's, Arizona, Houston, and who was the last one? Iowa State in my final four. All of them still alive. All of them looked really good. And I know St. John's really made me sweat that one out for some reason. But overall, I feel so really good about that final four. I feel good about my national champion. Again, Utah State made things a little interesting versus Arizona, but Arizona, just with their depth and overall just star power, were able to pull away and just make sure that Utah State didn't completely flip the script. Florida was very surprised that they lost to Iowa. I was telling you this via text, but you could have given me a billion chances, and obviously it's not a billion different combinations that come out of those respective areas right there, the top half of the South bracket. But Iowa, Nebraska would have been maybe the seventh. If I had to rank all the probabilities of what was likely going to be, it probably would be seventh, maybe eighth, because I just did not expect Iowa for one to make it this far, and I certainly didn't think Nebraska was going to make it past Vanderbilt. So the fact that both those teams are playing with each
Vanderbilt,
other,
you sold.
matchup.
You sold. You have so many Cornell players. You are a Cornell pipeline, and you sold. You sold my bracket. You ruined my dreams.
Man, the levels work that I'm gonna have to do in post is gonna be crazy, so I don't blow. If you're listening to this podcast, you can just
Headphone warning.
Yeah, we're
Just like
gonna have
before
to,
that, just like black screen, like headphone warning, and just like
we're gonna
ear
have
rape.
to dim. We're gonna have to lower that by at least a couple levels, maybe 15, just so that sounds at least somewhat makes
Nebraska are
somewhat sense and
frauds.
doesn't blow. Yeah, obviously not Davian because they made it this far. They beat Vanderbilt, but anywho, getting back to my picks though, I feel really good about all of them. Davian, I I know if you're a scoreboard watcher, you're gonna see 81-58 Duke beat TCU, but that was not a good game again by
Mm-mm.
Duke. TCU kept it tight the entire time. They were right with them until the 7 minute mark, and then Duke just kept getting all the fouls, whether they were fouls or not. TCU didn't get anything for them, and Duke just complete. Once Duke went up by I think like 8 points, it was just over, and Duke just ran away with it. TCU just couldn't make a shot. They're clearly rattled by what was going on. This this Duke team, I just think they're going to get absolutely shut down by St. John's. I know St. John's goes on these 5 minute stretches sometimes where they just cannot make a shot for the life of them, but I look at this Duke team and I just cannot envision them going on a deep run with the injuries and just with how poorly they've been playing this entire tournament. I think they're going to get completely, unless the refs call everything from a physicality perspective in this game, which would be horrendous. I don't think Duke really has a chance for St. John's. I think St. John's is going to it's going to be a close game, but I think St. John's is going to pull away at the end. This Duke team just, for the best school, I obviously injuries, I get it, but for the best school, the school that was ranked number 1 in the overall bracket, they do not look good right now at all.
No, they don't. Rafi, they really don't. I would have picked Kansas over Duke as well if they ended up winning. Um, because I really don't like how this Duke team is playing. Yes, at the end of when the game matters, they start playing well. I guess you could say. Yeah, fouls and everything did go towards them, but I feel like it's kind of hard to say it was just that. This Duke team is good. They deserve to. They deserve to beat TCU, but I still think St. John's wins. There's a reason why I picked St. John's to go so far. I think that they're a great team put together. I think that they have players who step up when it matters the most, especially at the end of that Kansas game. Uh, so yeah, I mean, in terms of my picks, Rafi, and answering the question I asked you, I still have Arizona. I'm still sticking with my bracket. This Arizona team has nobody's really talked about it much because they've just been doing what what they're supposed to be doing, right? They beat one guy and they smoked them. Fins up though. They beat Utah State. This Arkansas team. I think they're going to beat them as well. I think they're going to go far. I think what's the most interesting area of the bracket is really as the South and the Midwest. With the South, with having 2 upsets in Iowa and Nebraska winning, does Houston just completely dominate through there, or does Iowa and Nebraska really make a noise next round? Also, Illinois, you can't count them out. Michigan and Bama. Bama's been, what we talked about. Bama being this all of a sudden this juggernaut of a team, absolute juggernaut, Rafi. I mean, both of their games they've won by plus 20 points against serious competition too in Akron and Texas Tech. Of course, Texas Tech hasn't played as well in the past, and I didn't expect Texas Tech to, beat Akron, but things happen.
Yeah, I think the big thing too is the fact that Houston, that those 4, Houston versus Illinois, and then obviously Nebraska versus Iowa, that's going to be in Houston, the Sweet 16 and the Elite 8. So that's going to be something that's going to be very interesting to see how that unfolds with Houston essentially getting just home court advantage. U of I is obviously going to give Houston the biggest, closest matchup out of the 3 schools that could potentially play Houston, either playing Houston or could potentially play them if Houston to win the Elite 8. Also, just want to mention this too. It was really funny seeing how people were, when the bracket was revealed, saying, "Oh, this is so unfair. If Florida goes to the Elite 8 and they play Houston, then they're going to be playing at Houston, giving the 2 seed the advantage, blah, blah, blah. Bracketing principles, this, that." And you know what? Florida's out now. We didn't even get to that. So it just shows once again that, yes, people can have their qualms with how the bracket's made, but things need to go in that fashion. And obviously, as we've seen in the past, things don't typically go as chalk as you'd like to believe. So I just want to say that there's a lot of wasted energy on that conversation, all for naught at the end of the day, because again, Florida lost to Iowa. But yeah, overall, I'm going to be intrigued to see how Alabama plays against Michigan. Obviously, as I mentioned previously, I had Alabama originally over Michigan going into things before I heard about the Holloway situation. You lose your second leading scorer. Obviously, I had some doubts on Alabama, but they just have been shooting the lights out of the 3 ball. I think they had
they really
9 or
have
10 3-pointers plus in that game versus Texas Tech. They just completely took that game over. So if they're on, and it seems like they're on right now, I think they're going to give Michigan a good run for their money. I'm certainly glad that I do have 2 brackets and money pools. I have one where Michigan's coming out of the Midwest, one where Iowa State is. I'm very glad that I have at least one with Iowa State coming out, because even though I went back on my Alabama going far, I'm now coming back to Alabama saying, you know what, I would not be surprised if Alabama beats Michigan, knocks them off. Also, just want to mention too, Rick Pitino, you have my boy at Duke, you have Dan Hurley, Tom Izzo, Shire. John Shire. I cannot forget my boy John Shire. That is an insane group of 4 coaches in the East Quadrant. That you have for sure 3 Hall of Famers, and John Shire, with how good Duke's been doing since he's taken over things from Coach K, is on the path. Needs a national championship or two, but is on the path at least to getting into Hall of Fame. Obviously, still very young in his coaching career or head coaching career. But you have 4 fantastic coaches facing off in the final 4 of the East region. That's going to be really great because all these games I think are going to be close, and it's just going to be best on best, not only with the players but also the coaches too, which is extremely exciting for me.
Yeah, no, the coaching and the legacy behind that is really interesting. And honestly, Rafi, I just can't wait to see what happens. It's madness.
100%.
It's March.
Yes. And one last note too, because I know we didn't really touch on the West too much. If anyone's taking down Arizona, Acuff could just take over that game. I would be obviously distraught because I have Arizona in my championship and I have Arizona winning. My actual like predictions is Arizona winning, and in my bracket of Arizona losing in one of them and winning the other, both facing off against Houston. Houston winning one, Arizona winning the other. Like to spread things out a little bit, but if anyone's taking on Arizona, it's going to be Acuff. I would not be surprised if Acuff just completely takes over the game and puts up 40 points and just drags Arkansas to the Elite Eight to take on the winner of Texas Purdue. So just want to mention that as well. But I think that'll do it for this edition of the Benchwarmer Sports Podcast. Let us know your thoughts on what's already happened in March Madness, World Baseball Classic, Flag Football. Let us know about the upcoming matches as well. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And yeah, have a good one. See ya.
Peace.